my name is Isabel Santamaria.
And Isabel, where are you from?
Well, I was born in the United States, but my parents were Cuban refugees.
What was the extent of your contact with the legal system growing up?
Well, growing up, I practically had no contact with the legal system. I never stepped foot in a courtroom, in a court of law, except for one ticket that ended up being not being mine. And other than that, that was as far as it goes. No other interaction with it.
How did you become aware of the Color of Law Center?
I became aware of the Color of Law Center because my husband Abdiel Echeverria, we did a video. He was the one on the video, and we posted on YouTube, speaking of the corruption and the discrimination in the 18th Judicial Circuit Court of Florida, specifically the Vieira, Florida courthouse. And we posted a video that we were filing a lawsuit, civil rights lawsuit against the court and against the county and against the state of Florida. And basically in the comment section, an attorney from the Color of Law Center contacted us and asked us that if we can please email her, that she is very interested in hearing about our case.
Would you consider yourself to be a person with a disability or disabilities?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And do you mind sharing with us what you consider your disabilities to be?
Yes, I have both disabilities according to the ADA, the Americans Disabilities Act, and the 2016 amendments of the ADA. I have diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic fatigue syndrome / fibromyalgia. They also suspect that I have multiple sclerosis. I have arthritis, sciatic neuropathy. I suffer also from chronic migraines. I have an anxiety disorder that causes panic attacks along with PTSD, depression. I have medial epicondylitis in my elbows, bursitis. I also have visual impairments, which includes glaucoma, hemorrhage in the back of my eyes, for which I need surgery every 6 to 12 months to avoid blindness. And I also have Busaka's nodules, a very rare condition in the iris of my eye.
Would you say that you face complex challenges as a woman of color with disabilities? And if so, are you open to sharing what those challenges are?
Yes, absolutely. I do face challenges. We all face, being a woman, being disabled, and being a minority, we all face challenges all the time. But of course, when I was confronted with the court system is when it really magnified. That's when it really magnified to the extent that, okay, this goes beyond what I've ever experienced in my entire life regarding discrimination.
So you mentioned to us earlier that you were in litigation in the 18th Circuit. Tell us about that. What was your litigation about?
Yes, in 2015, specifically September 11th, 2015, Carrington Mortgage Services, LLC, they filed a lis pendens of foreclosure against me and my husband. They had become the servicer, allegedly become the servicer of our mortgage that was passed down by Bank of America, which we also had issues with them regarding discrimination as well in the past. And that's when it all started with the foreclosure litigation. And when I began to, when I hired a ADA advocate and I started requesting accommodations, that's when the problems really started for me in that court.
So you perceived that you really didn't have much issue until you started to request reasonable accommodations. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, correct. That is correct. One of my accommodations, one of my necessary accommodations that the court, the the whole entire court and the judge, the presiding judge, was aware of is that I needed an ADA advocate with me at all times. My husband, due to his job, he could not go sometimes, and I was gonna have to go by myself. I was the one that prepared all the documents. I did the arguments. I researched all the law. I was the one that did everything, but I needed somebody there with me due to prior experiences, actually, when Bank of America and prior litigation regarding a loan modification, they violated my rights. Their attorneys for Ackerman LLP violated my rights numerous times during that litigation. So since I already experienced that, I wanted to at least have a fair shot in my foreclosure case, so I wouldn't go through the same things again. But obviously it was actually even worse once I asked for the accommodations, and specifically for me to have my ADA advocate with me at all times in the courtroom and in all proceedings.
How did you submit your request for reasonable accommodation, and what request did you submit?
I submitted my request, the required, with all requirements, how it was required by the court, by the Florida court system. They have a form that's called ADA Title II accommodations request form. And the first 2 or 3 pages are instructions. The other 2 pages are basically telling you to state your disabilities, your name, when do you need these accommodations for. I put ongoing, no limit, because I needed them all the time for all proceedings. And they ask you several questions. They also ask you in that accommodations form if you want larger print documents, that I also asked because I have visual impairments, and numerous things. I signed it, I faxed it to I did it as required. I just didn't make up a form. I filled out the required form according to the Florida state court system. I sent it to the ADA coordinator, Ty Bordeaux, which was required for me to fax it or email it, or send that particular form signed by me to the coordinator. I did everything that was required by me to ask legitimately for my accommodations.
Did you ever receive a response from the court regarding your request for reasonable accommodations?
Yes, I did. Actually, I received a phone call about 2 or 3 days later after I submitted my initial form, which I submitted in May of 2016. 2 or 3 days later, the ADA coordinator calls me. I did not receive an email or any other written communication. He called me and tells me that the presiding judge, Judge Lisa Davidson in my case, that she approved my accommodations, and there was no problem with what I had requested.
So officially, we should say your accommodations were approved. So then the question is, in practice, so when you went to your hearings and things of that nature, were your accommodations met in the courtroom?
I would not say that they were precisely met. There were some things in my accommodations that were never supplied to me, like cart services at first. Later on during litigation, it was provided. The court never sent me in large print documents as I requested, because they would mail me in the mail, I would get all the documents that were served, and I never received, according to my knowledge, any larger print documents. And at first, my ADA advocate was allowed to be there with me. And when I had a panic attack, or because that's what I requested, if I had a medical emergency, that she can act on my behalf, basically. Not if I can speak, but if in a case that I can't speak, I can't read, because I have visual impairments, so she has to read something for me in the courtroom, or if I request the court to stop the hearing because I'm having a medical emergency, some things of that. And she was supposed to be there to protect my rights as well. So they at first did comply for one hearing alone with Judge Larry Johnston, I believe. he did allow Ms. Sharp to read my argument, because she did have my argument in writing, and she did give the judge a legitimate authorization form for her to represent me, not as an attorney, but as my ADA advocate, and in specific circumstances be able to speak on my behalf. And the judge was fine with it. However, later on, when that same judge, sent an email to Ty Bordeaux, the ADA coordinator, saying I had an interesting case today regarding Miss Santamaria and an ADA advocate that had to speak for her because she was having a panic attack in the courtroom. That's when the beehive started at that point, and they became aware, oh, hold on a second, we got to do something about stopping this person from getting that accommodation, or continue receiving that accommodation, which by the way, it was of no burden to the court. They never paid for any of my accommodations at all. So it wasn't something that was going to burden the court anyway, because she was doing this pro bono.
So the court obstructed your ability to have a totally free to the court ADA advocate with you during your proceedings. Is that what happened?
Yes, ma'am. They, after that hearing that I'm talking about, when we stepped outside the courtroom, we were, it was the three attorneys for the the case, because I had filed a counterclaim as well. So it was the attorneys for Bank of America, which was Liebler, Gonzalez, and Portuondo. The attorneys for Carrington, which was Ackerman, LLP, specifically Scott Stengel. And then the attorneys that filed the original lis pendens, which was Marinosi Law Group. Those three attorneys were outside of the courtroom, and they verbally attacked us outside the courtroom, threatened us with removing my ADA advocate. They threatened my husband, they threatened me, they threatened my ADA advocate. They said that they will do whatever it takes to remove her from the case. And obviously they did, behind the scenes, do whatever it took to remove her. And basically threatening us. She can't, and they threatened her inside the courtroom as well. Scott Stengel threatened her inside the courtroom, saying that she was practicing unlicensed practice of law. It's on the transcript. So they have already preconditioned the court with those falsehoods, and to deprive me of that necessary crutch, that necessary accommodation that I needed to be able to have fair litigation. She wasn't an attorney. She was just there to protect my rights and to support me and to speak if need be. She was never meant to be an attorney. So they did whatever they could to interfere with my accommodations, to retaliate, and to remove my accommodations. Both the court administration, and the attorneys with their law firms, they were all involved in removing attempting to remove my accommodations, and attempting to remove ADA advocates as a whole in all of the state of Florida as well, according to the emails, the ex parte communications that I also have in my possession.
Okay, so let's break that up into some portions. So let's start with what happened in the hallway with the attorneys threatening to get your advocate off of the case. Did you make the court aware of the attorneys harassing you in this way? And did the court do anything about it?
Yes, my husband filed an affidavit. My ADA advocate also filed an affidavit, and nothing was done. They specified what happened. Even the bailiff had to get involved. She was screaming. They were screaming at my husband and screaming at my AD advocate. And I was like having a panic attack. And I kept going to the back and forth bathroom and trying to put water in my face to calm down. And then I would come up and they were still threatening. And I would try to stay away, but I couldn't. I was like appalled and like so utterly disappointed that I can't believe something that I needed, that was being taken away from me. And they were interfering with my accommodations that the court allegedly had already approved, So I was like appalled. I was a nervous wreck. And yes, they did file on the record affidavits regarding this. We brought it up several times in motions, in a motion to disqualify Judge Holcomb, and several motions in the court. We did bring it up, and nothing was ever addressed. Nothing was ever done about those, about the threats and their behavior outside the courtroom.
Did the court ever make any affirmative efforts to support your right to an advocate, or did they do the opposite?
No, they absolutely did not. They did not do anything. I believe that at first they thought my AD advocate was just going to be there like a bump on a log and not say anything and just be there like I would bring a teddy bear to the courtroom, and just be there silent, not do a thing. And when they saw that she was a proactive ADA advocate, that she was really, really trying to protect me, as they're supposed to protect me and be there for me, supportive also as well. They lost their minds. They lost their minds. I think I was the first person, honestly, in that whole courthouse that came to the courthouse with that type of ADA advocate in a foreclosure case. I don't think any of them, in reality, faced that situation, and they weren't having it. They refused to break up their perfect little world to accommodate some insignificant minority lady with disabilities that's trying to fight for her property, because I did also have the right to defend my property. Those are my property rights as well, not just my disability rights. And they were just violating the Constitution left and right. And there was nothing I could do about it.
Who was it that accused your advocate of participating in unlicensed practice of the law?
Yeah, specifically it was Ackerman LLP's attorney, Scott Russell Stengel. He said it in the courtroom. He was actually the more verbal and violent one outside of the courtroom. It was like a pack. It was a pack outside of the courtroom. And those three attorneys attacking us, but the one that took the lead and the one that was more aggressive of the three, the other two were, yes, they were supporting. It's like, like feeding him, but his ego. But Stengel was the more aggressive one in that attack inside and outside the courtroom.
Did the court respond to this attorney's accusations that your advocate was participating in an unlicensed practice of the law?
The judge did not, he did not respond. He did not, he said he was going to allow it this time. That's basically what he said it's in the transcript. And I didn't remember a lot of things that were going on in the courtroom because I was having a panic attack. So I kind of like block out certain things. But when I read the transcript is when I, okay, everything comes in, is shown of what happened word for word inside the courtroom. And after that hearing is when the judge, that presiding judge in that hearing where they were threatening us, he started the email chain with Ty Bordeaux, the ADA coordinator. I had an interesting hearing today regarding an ADA advocate, and that's when Ty Bordeaux, even though also Ty Bordeaux that afternoon when we arrived at my house, my ADA advocate was with us. She called Ty Bordeaux on the phone, the ADA coordinator, on the phone, and told him what happened outside the courtroom. She goes, since you are the ADA coordinator and these are ADA violations, I think you should know what's going on in your courtroom with these attorneys attacking me, my client, and her husband. And she explained everything to Mr. Bordeaux that same afternoon. after we arrived home, after that hearing, and nothing was ever done. Actually, that's when Mr. Bordeaux kind of pointed the sword at us. Basically, he became, his stance, his demeanor, everything changed from that point on, after the judge made him aware of what happened in the courtroom, and after we made him aware of how we were being attacked outside of the courtroom as well.
So you mentioned some emails that were exchanged. Tell us more about that. First of all, tell us how you became aware of these emails, which are, as you accurately stated, ex parte communications. And then tell us what was the content of these emails.
Well, I received advice first from a fellow litigant that said, you know, because I already knew that my rights were violated, and that's why I filed a federal case in the federal court in Orlando, and I knew my rights were being violated, and I filed that, but I was pro se. So the court, I tried to do it without paying the fees and everything, and they denied me once, over and over again, to prolong it. Then finally, when my pleading became relevant for them, they tried everything they could to dismiss my case, and they did. And I never appealed it because I never had the funds to do so. But when after all that happened, and I knew in my heart that it happened, I tried to introduce I asked for emails while that case was still on. In October of 2019, I asked the administration, the court administration, obviously the records keeper, for pursuant to Florida Statutes 119, for my public records, all ex parte communications regarding certain people. So, any interaction between the judge, the presiding judge, and this person, and the JA, and the attorneys in the case, and several other people that were involved that I felt, and during certain time frames, because if not, it would have been way too costly. So basically, when I asked for those records, it was October of this past year of 2019. I received them on beginning of December of 2019. And that's when I received the records, and that's when it really came to light. That was like a shock of how badly they were violating my rights behind the scenes and interfering with my accommodations, with my due process rights, with everything. It was in black and white, and it was completely disturbing to me. I couldn't stop crying for 3 days, honestly. That's how disturbed I was. And then the following month, after I received the emails, my case in federal court was dismissed. They refused to let me amend my complaint to introduce the new evidence in my case that would further support my case. And so they dismissed my case, and that's what happened regarding the emails. That's how I acquired them. I did acquire them, and I picked them up in person. A huge stack. A lot of them were repeated, but yes, I did pick them up in person at the courthouse when they were ready.
So after receiving these emails and seeing these communications regarding your advocate and your accommodations, what did you do next?
When I received these emails, I basically was first of all, after getting over the initial shock, since I didn't have an ADA advocate anymore. She abandoned me in 2017, so I couldn't contact her and tell her, look, this is what happened. This is what they were trying to do to you, to me, to all ADA advocates in Florida. I wasn't able to introduce them as evidence in my prior case. My case was dismissed in January of 2020. And I started contacting, I even sent emails to Judge Labarga, which is a really good, supposedly or allegedly a really good advocate of disability in the state of Florida. He's a Supreme Court Florida Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice. And I sent it to the media. I sent it to the DOJ, which I still haven't received any response. I filed it in the court. I filed it in the court with a motion to vacate in August of 2009 of this year. I filed a motion to vacate, attaching the email showing that the judgment that I received against us in 2018 was biased and corrupt, and the fraud upon the court was being committed, and my due process violations were violated. It was all in writing, black and white, within those internal emails, and I filed that in August of 2020, a motion to vacate that judgment because they cannot legally take my house or remove me from my house because of how they acquired the judgment. And it's been sitting in the court ever since then. Nothing's been done. It's been there in the court on the record along with the emails ever since then. And nobody has tried to reach out to us, even though these violations are very egregious, until the Color of Law Center reached out to us and gratefully did the right thing and focusing on this situation here.
So my next question to you would be, what do you feel could be done to assist you? Do you think an attorney that's familiar with disability civil rights could be of assistance to you? What do you think you need to be able to get these violations addressed?
Well, basically, absolutely. During litigation, I've been litigating since 2010 first with the fraud and with everything else, but there was, my rights were still being violated back then. I was pro se. They were taking advantage of me. All these years, they were taking advantage of me. They didn't care. They just didn't care. Oh, she's some disabled Hispanic lady. We don't care, she's not going to do anything about it, and fighting and doing all the documents by myself. It became overwhelming. My vision is bad. I would keep having to ask for extensions to file documentation in the court because of my impairments. And it really is very overwhelming in my condition to take on a case or cases of this magnitude that I've had to, on top of this, deal with abuse and my due process and civil rights being violated consistently. And I did have an attorney towards the end of my foreclosure case, but they just didn't care. The damage was already done. They had their agenda. I was gonna lose the case. The presiding judge for the foreclosure case was given a really bad review of me as a human being and as a troublemaker, probably 3 days before trial. So he had his mind made up by the time the trial came around. Ty Bordeaux and other people were involved in that. And basically, I think if I would have had an attorney to defend my civil rights, I mean, I can see how when I had my ADA advocate, they were violating my rights, but they were scared. They were intimidated by her. They really were intimidated by her. And I feel that if I had an attorney, and more specifically, if an attorney that would be ADA friendly or ADA knowledgeable, would assist me, that would be that there's no price tag that how valuable that would be for me and my family, because we have all been affected by this. It's not just been me, it's been my husband, it's been my children. I had to file for bankruptcy. Me and my husband had to file for bankruptcy, basically have to start all over because of all of this. They tried to sell my house twice. So I think all of these things, I mean, if it would have been nipped in the bud, probably with an attorney from the beginning that was ADA friendly or knowledgeable, I think things might have turned out a little different. Maybe I'm hoping that that's the case, but I need all the help I can get right now. I sure do.
So you mentioned that at a certain point you were representing yourself. So my question is, do you think your disabilities affected your ability to represent yourself?
Absolutely.
And how so?
Absolutely. When you write the argument, you have to do the research. You have concentration problems, memory problems, vision problems, and you're doing all of this, spending hours and hours and hours every week trying to do whatever you can to keep a roof over your head and your family's head. And while facing these challenges as being a disabled person, and then on top of that, you I have to go into a courtroom having panic attacks, which I can't barely speak sometimes, or can't even present my argument properly. I forget half of what I have to say. And being there alone without any representation, because my husband couldn't help me with any of the argument or anything because he had no time. He had absolutely no time to prepare. I was the one that had, since I'm disabled, I've been home. I don't work. I can't work, and I don't receive any assistance at all. So that was the only benefit that I had, is that I had the time to prepare these arguments and these documents that were filed in the court. But I needed accommodations for extensions. I needed to get breaks. I asked for breaks when I needed to in the courtroom. That was never granted to me as well. I asked for several things that was never complied with in my accommodations. And then I didn't have anybody with me, or they wanted me to be all alone so they can attack me and just abuse my civil rights in the courtroom with impunity. It was a sabotage. It was they attacked me. It was just, I'm traumatized by the whole experience. I really do not want to go through it again. And I feel that there's absolutely no hope for me or any other person with disabilities in that courthouse. I really don't. I really don't think so.
So if all of your accommodations that you requested and that you were told would be met were actually met, do you think you would have had a fair chance at representing yourself?
I do believe so. I would have had a greater chance. I don't know if it would have been 100%, because as it is, according to the emails, they really despised me and were telling me that even the clerk of court, Scott Ellis, with a coordinator, Mark Van Bever, they were having email interchanges regarding me being a troublemaker, that they have a history with me, that all I wanted was a free house, and that's why I wanted an ADA advocate. All of these things are in black and white. So even though I do believe that I would have had a better chance, these people behind the scenes, they fail. They need more training, or they need to be removed from their positions, because not only are they heartless, they do not have any ADA knowledge whatsoever. Because if they did, they would not have acted the way they acted against me. And I can just imagine what they've done to other people. But I do believe that if my accommodations were met, I would have had a better chance. I'm not going to say that I would have had a really good chance, but I think I would have had a better chance, and it would have been more, how can I say, it would have been better for my health, because when you pass out in a courtroom and there's 4 attorneys attacking you and a judge that is letting you sit there passed out in a chair while they're presenting their argument, and you can't even defend yourself, and they're not even checking to see if I'm dead or alive, and they're just ranting and going about their way, and her granting everything that they wanted 15 minutes while I'm passing out, and then 45 minutes before that while I was having a panic attack and wasn't able to properly defend myself. There was, I mean, if I would have at least had an ADA advocate there, I believe she would have stopped the hearing. She would have done everything she could and probably called an ambulance for me at that point. Instead, ambulance came after I collapsed to the floor. My blood pressure was 230 over 165. That was the first reading that they took. I believe I had a TIA, a mini stroke in that courtroom. And I probably, you know, that wouldn't have happened to me if I had somebody, an ADA advocate or an attorney there with me, representing me or assisting me. They completely and utterly abused me. It was a complete mockery towards a disabled person, having somebody sit there for 15 minutes without able to speak at all, passed out in a chair. And they just didn't even care. It's on the transcript. Nobody even said, I wonder if she's okay. Let's check on her. Nothing. They just left me there like if I didn't exist. And all this time I was having a medical emergency. And I had to recover from that, both physically and mentally and psychologically, from that episode or from that horrible experience. So I believe if I would have had an attorney with me there, that probably wouldn't have happened to me. I don't think it would have happened to me.
And, you know, Isabel, I agree with you. And I think that an attorney in your litigation is essential. But I also think that, as you expressed, you also have the right to an ADA advocate. And that is, in fact, why the ADA exists, is so that people with disabilities have advocates on their behalf, have accommodations. There should be no reason that you are having a medical emergency and a hearing persist. You know, emergency personnel isn't called, things of that nature. But I do agree that at this stage in your litigation, an attorney would be absolutely essential. And so to that, I say to the viewers of this interview, you know, we are sitting here with a very, very brave and determined woman. And so we are seeking a brave and determined attorney who is barred in the state of Florida, who is not afraid to take on the court system, you know, and to challenge them to actually follow the laws which already exist. We're seeking you. We, of course, as the Color of Law Center, would be involved in the litigation to assist in any way we could. We would also be compensating you for your work. We are seeking attorneys who understand the way that the legal system works, but who also understand that if there is no one willing to challenge the legal system, then our rights will not be enforced. It is up to us to say, I know my rights, and I'm asking that they actually be met and accommodated. So our contact information will be included in the presentation as well. We have on hand all of the documentation relating to Isabel's case. We will make that available, of course, at request. And as I said, we are here to assist you in any way that we can, but we are seeking a Florida barred attorney who can actually go the long haul with this case. At this stage in her litigation, Isabel is challenging the judgment against her in her foreclosure matter because of the fact that there was discrimination going on in her case and ex parte communications, which should not have happened. You can reach us by email or by phone. You can reach out to me personally or to my executive director, Lena Hardaway. We are looking forward to hearing from you. And I would say, Isabel, is there anything else that you would like for the world to know?
Yes, I would like for the world to know that even though we go to the court system to present, whether it be criminal, civil, whatever it may be, and we have our disabilities, we are also human. We want to be treated fairly. We want to get a fair chance in the system, in the court system. And people like me and others have been denied that and have been discriminated against with impunity. And I believe that, you know, it's only fair that we request or that we be given a fair chance to properly litigate, and that we are given the chance to have either representation with us if we cannot afford one, or that we are allowed to bring an ADA advocate with us so they can assist us medically and support us in any way so we can have a fair shot in the court system here in the United States.